Hello everyone, JT at StayOnTheRise, where I use my 25 years of experience in contacts in the industry with app developers, designers, and companies that have built their entrepreneurs and their startups around apps. And I walk you through the steps required to actually take your idea to reality. So today I wanted to give you some insight. I was in contact with Jay Garcia, who's the co-founder of ModusCreate. ModusCreate is a boutique development studio. Basically, they're an all-in-one shop. They'll do design, they'll do the development of apps or websites or anything else. And one of the reasons why I wanted to reach out to him was basically they've gone in 5 years from being a small single shop in the Baltimore area or Washington, D.C. area in the United States to now being an international shop that caters to Fortune 500 businesses. Some of their clients include the Atlantic Weekly, Time, PBS, Fortune itself, the magazine, Barclays, and basically, I wanted to talk to him, get his insights, and pass those along to you in terms of how they went and built up this kind of a business, because a lot of those things can be applied back into your own business. So basically, one of the things that they did early on, and this is a talented group of individuals. So to start off with, it wasn't, even though it's meteoric in that sense of just being 5 years, they certainly had a lot of talent, a high degree of talent, a lot of experience, a lot of domain knowledge when it came to building apps and the infrastructure of the web in general. So they started with that, and it's also some good business sense. But basically, they started out and leveraged that by basically being willing to take on just about any project. They kind of took the Richard Branson approach where, accept an opportunity and then figure out how to do it. Now, they did that with some forethought. Basically, they would follow certain trends, be looking at how the trends were in the industry, and then go out and find and recruit very talented individuals to do that. So now, right now, they've expanded out of their Washington, D.C. area, and now they have operations in Western Europe, Eastern Europe, and throughout the United States. So one of the things in talking with him, because I wanted to get something that was definitive to the clients that I work with, helping to start up your app business, where I asked him specifically, what advice did he have on somebody that's starting off, either building a business around an app, or they maybe have an app and they're trying to get more leverage and trying to get more success around this. And a lot of these things are aligned with the course that I teach. But it's good to have that kind of confirmation. So he had 5 main suggestions, or very specific things when I asked him, what was his best clients, and how did he say that whenever you're coming into and going to find high talented development shops or even high talented individuals, what to look for, how to prepare yourself. So his first suggestion, or his very strong recommendation, was that whatever you're developing, whether you're starting out with an MVP, a most viable product, or whether you're actually looking at the product and now you're going to go out and seek the talent from engineers or development shop, he said that the most important thing is to scope out your budget. You scope it out to down to the dollar. In other words, how much can you spend to get this job, or whatever level of the product is that you want to have accomplished. He said this is very important because it allows the development shop or the engineers to basically look at the work that's required and figure out to what degree can they complete that within that budget constraint, and also what they should use to get there, because there's lots and lots of different ways of slicing the onion, as they say. And so selecting what kind of platform, how to start out, what languages to use, and how to stage that development process is tightly related to how much money you have to spend. If you only have $5,000, you're going to get this amount of work. It's still going to be good work, but might be affected in a different way, and it may only get you a certain degree along the path. If you have $100,000 to spend, obviously you can have more people, and in some cases possibly accelerate the work. But he said that was a fundamental. A lot of people don't come in, they have really no idea how much they want to spend, or they really haven't thought through how much they should spend to get that type of product done. The other thing he said is to really plan and have room with whatever plan or whatever product that you're developing to pivot. Because as you're going through this process, certain things will be discovered. If it's being done right and you're talking to your customers, you might discover that what you had originally thought you should develop isn't what you should develop. And that's based on this customer feedback loop and learning these types of things. And when it comes to that point, you have to have flexibility, both mentally and within the company, to say, okay, this isn't pushing up this rope, or pushing this water up the hill isn't going to work. I need to pivot. I need to take a different thing. And you want to have room, not only in your budget, but in your concept, and be willing to accept the advice of if you're working with a good, well-disciplined team, they're going to come back and may challenge some of your assumptions. And they may suggest some very positive things based on what they've gotten feedback on. So you have to be willing to pivot on that and to get closer to that success. If you keep static and you want to go forward, certainly development shop, because again, they're looking at their money. Not all of them are as altruistic. Not all of them will necessarily come back and say, no, you're doing it wrong. We would like to suggest this. And they'll just take your money. But most of the good ones will actually come back and say, have you thought about this? And if you're really, really rigid and you're stuck in your ways, it may not turn out the way you want. Or they even may decide that, well, okay, you're not a good fit for us. And that does happen. The other thing that he said is to come correct. And what he meant from that is that don't just come in with a blank sheet of paper or even just some random sketches saying, well, this is kind of what I think I want, and expect that development shop or the developers to just magically come up with a final and well-developed product that's going to meet your needs. You have to have done your homework. You have to have come to them with a pretty defined strategy. You have to know your product and what you think and what you believe the customer actually wants. Down to it, it doesn't have to be down to the colors and logo and those types of things, but what you really have to be able to describe is how your product is actually satisfying the needs of the user. And this can be done in a story fashion, that somebody, does it. It can be in a mock-up type of fashion, but all of those components of what make out the product. Does it have a social aspect? Does it have to have, registration and other types of feedback loops or other types of hooks that fit into this product? You have to have that well defined. If you don't have it well defined, and you go out to some development shops, you'll end up spending a tremendous amount of time because they have to learn then. And you're going to be going through this iterative process that you, at being the domain expert, have to bring to the party. You cannot expect developers that may not know your domain, may not know your industry, to suddenly learn that. If you do expect that, they will try, but you will end up spending inordinate amounts of money and time basically teaching them, allowing them to get up the knowledge necessary to produce a product that actually fits into your market space. So you have to come with a complete set of requirements, as detailed as possible. And again, this doesn't have to be technically detailed. It just has to be detailed in the scope and the nature of what that product has to do, how it has to behave, how many users you're planning, how are you planning on scaling, because all of that goes into that original design. One of his things that he said, that problem that he runs into a lot of times with people that come to him, a lot of times they'll come in because that they've come to ModusCreate is because they're having some sort of problem. For instance, it can't scale, or they're having some other issue with that product. And when ModusCreate gets involved in it, they come and they recognize that, well, the way it had been architected, the way it had been constructed in its current state does not allow it to scale, for instance. So it's not just a simple thing of saying, okay, you got to put these little pieces in place and suddenly you'll be able to scale it. Sometimes you have to, and I've gone through this myself, you have to look at the whole product, and you might have to re-architect a significant portion of the application. That's going to, again, cost you a lot of time and effort, and it's difficult for a lot of companies to sometimes accept that fact. But the reality is, if you have not brought this to, when you're starting out, your initial thing, if you have not thought about things like scope and how big it's going to get and how people are going to interact with it, if you haven't come up with these definitions, you could end up having the product architected incorrectly, and you're going to have to end up throwing it away. Now that might be part of your process. It's perfectly fine to start out with something, a most viable product type of scenario where you know that was just put together just to meet a particular goal, to get a certain learning perspective, with the full intent that you're going to throw it away. Okay, and that's perfectly viable. And it's okay if you have that in your plan. But there's nothing worse than thinking that you have a great product that actually even seems to be working, but now you're running into a problem with scaling or some other facet of it, and to have somebody come back and say, well, we'll never be able to get this to work without complete redesign, or at least a significant amount of redesign. So coming with a good set of development requirements that really touch into your knowledge of the domain, and trying to at least bridge that gap. It's one of the things that I go through in the course, is bridging that gap between your domain expertise and the technical component of the people that have to actually develop the application, is very, very important. And he kind of confirmed that. The other thing that he said is to really avoid getting into a contract with whether it's developers, whether it's a consulting shop, of a fixed price bid. The reality is, and having been doing this myself for many, many, many years, development and architecture and building a product out is as much art as it is science. There's nothing especially if you're doing something new, it's not like it's been done before. There's certainly components that have been done before, and you can leverage that off with experience. But the reality is that it's a bit of an unknown. So if you have somebody, you're going out, let's say you have $10,000, you're going to invest that in having this built out. You will run across a lot of development shops, a lot of offshore development things, nothing against them, but you just have to vet them properly. But if they come back and they say, well, how much do you have to spend? And you say, well, I have $10,000, I have $20,000 to spend. And they come back and say, yes, we'll do it for you for $10,000 or $20,000. The reality is that it's unlikely at that very first stage, unless they've gone through a certain amount of investigation, that they can commit to that. And if they are committing to that, the likelihood that you get actually what you want, what you intended to get out of that, is very, very low. Also, when you come into a fixed price kind of a bid situation, it's self-limiting. Not saying that, again, as I talked about before, and Jay had mentioned, you have to have a budget, and that's perfectly fine. You don't want to overspend. But at the same time, you cannot have this mentality saying, well, I know that for this budget, I'm going to get exactly what I want, because that's a process. You go through the process. Now, you want to learn it, you want to be refining it, and hopefully if you architect the thing properly, you're working with a good development shop, you might be able to get, your minimum acceptable level out of it for that amount of money. But if you start with that thing, you're self-limiting yourself, and you're self-limiting the development shop. They sometimes will reduce the work or may not spend the amount of time necessary because they have to fit within this fixed time frame that they've committed to. Okay, so they may reduce the amount of design work. They may reduce the amount of programming that's allotted. They may not do the amount of testing that's required to make sure that that product has quality. So something that he had said that very strongly to stay away from. So again, I hope this helps. Again, I would ask you that you subscribe to this channel and then click on following it. I'm going to have lots of more videos talking to some of these industry leaders, people both on the technical side as well as businesses that went to and developed their own technical expertise inside, so that you can take this and hopefully learn and be successful in developing your app business and your startup. So again, take care, and I'll see you next time.